Hello, ladies, and welcome to episode 171. I am so happy to be here with you today, not only to share great points, but also tools that, like I mentioned in the last episode, that not only will have guests here that are also military women, but they have so much to share their experiences from their background to what they are currently doing today. And before I go any further, I want to remind everyone that everything that's discussed here, everything that we mentioned, even if you don't get a chance to watch us through video, because today we're actually recording and you'll be able to see this on YouTube. But if you are driving or you're just cleaning around the house, I want to remind you that everything will be in the show notes, their bios, everything will be there readily for you to not only view and listen to, but also to share. And with that, I want to also ensure that you are not only enjoying this episode, but anything and everything that you are gaining from this podcast. If you would like to provide an insight on how you are learning, anything that you think that we need to learn more about how this could be more beneficial to you, please go to wendyray.com/podcast, scroll down to the bottom, and you can suggest a topic or even just provide your feedback. And we greatly appreciate your support and just for you tuning in today in this episode. All right. So with that, I just want to share a little bit of background on how we got here with Barb and Rosy, and really just through the power of communication, right? The power of the platforms that
Mhm.
we have, and I'm just super grateful that these wonderful women took the time to send me an email and say, "Hey, I want to not only be a part of this podcast, but also be able to share." What we have available with our program. And this is why I just love not only this podcast platform, email, social media, but we continue to connect with one another, even when we think that, we're too far or we're not close enough. And I think that as a military community, that is super beneficial and a really, a great point for us to really begin. And it really started because, as you guys know, last week have been celebrating not only the 75th anniversary of women being allowed to serve in the military, but
Mhm.
also to continue to share knowledge, continue to share everyone's personal experience. And ultimately, that's my goal here. And so when they reached out and they shared with me, what they're doing and all this data that you'll hear from them, it really just got me thinking that these two women will be a great opportunity to really continue to share the impact that we continue to make, but also the doors that are ready to be available and open for all military
Mhm.
women, not only military women veterans, but also veterans across the world and even military spouses. So, with that, I want to introduce to you. I want to introduce to you Barb Carson and Rosalinda Vasquez. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for taking the time. I know you have a tight schedule already, so thank you for providing us with not only your expertise, your background, but really too the next steps on how each woman listening now can not only experience but also have an impact with as well. So, with that, Barb, if you could please introduce yourself really quickly, and then we can hand it off to Rosalinda.
Sounds great. Wendy, so thrilled to be here and grateful for all that you're doing to show different pathways to women veterans. It means a lot. My brief history: I'm currently the managing director for programs and services at the Daniello Institute for Veterans and Military Families, which is housed at Syracuse University. I've been here just over a year. And my real quick path to how I got here was starting in Air Force ROTC a long, long time ago. I'm very grateful to the Air Force for getting me through school, to be honest. Active duty and nuclear command and control. And then following my aviator husband, who kind of ruined my career path, I went to the Air Force Reserve and became a public affairs officer. And was out of the workforce, honestly, except for the reserve for 10 years, and finished my Air Force career recently and went to the U.S. Small Business Administration, where I was a senior executive. And so I have a passion for entrepreneurship, which we'll talk about today. And then I am lucky enough to be here now at the Institute. I'll turn it over to Rosy.
Hi. So yeah, well, legally I'm Rosalinda Vasquez Mori, but I just go by Rosie for short. I guess so. I am the director of applied research and analytics, but how I got here, my parents immigrated to this country many, many years ago. And at that time, there was a lot of, naturalization to American citizens through service. My father was not one of those, but I grew up around a bunch of Hispanic doctors that did actually serve in Vietnam. So I grew up with the military service. I was in San Antonio. I feel like with being in San Antonio, that kind of everybody's a little familiar about the military. And certainly, I think initially when I started college, I didn't go right into anything, but I started studying psychology, and there was an internship that really led me down a career trajectory that was really focused on occupational analysis, industrial organizational psychology for the military. So my career pathway led me more than 20 years ago into this direction, but I did 10 years ago do the reverse migration from San Antonio to Syracuse, where I've been with the IVMF for, again, more than 10 years. And I do oversee a portfolio of different research efforts focused on the social, economic, and wellness components of transitioning service members, veterans, and their families.
Nice. Thank you so much for that. And I love that both of you have so much knowledge on different but also very similar tracks. And I want to just go in and kind of share with you. And I know we've met before and we've talked about how, why I am so excited to have you here because I went through the IVMF program and, more specifically, the Onward to Opportunity. And, for those of you that are, probably transitioning now or thinking about the transition, this is something that's offered in most major installations, regardless if you're in the Navy, in the Army, in the Air Force, in the Marines. There's a pathway to one of these programs within IVMF. And at that time, I was at Fort Bragg, now Fort Liberty, where I had first heard of IVMF. And I'm like, what is this? Is this something that, we can do? And, I kind of had that in my mind. And then I got my PCS to Fort Drum, and where again it was brought up, it was like constantly in my face, which is a great thing, right? Because I was an HR professional and I knew that there were resources out there for me even before I was ready to physically, transition. And so the beauty of, IVMF promoting onwards opportunity, there's VWise training, so many opportunities for different career paths. I think it's really what really stood out to me, right? It wasn't only if you're thinking of getting into entrepreneurship, or only if you're doing project management, or only if, you're doing X thing. And so when I heard about it, I'm like, oh, let me learn more. And I was just so blessed that at Fort Drum, we had an amazing, or I think she's still there, program manager, and just knew the ins and outs of anything that involved IVMF. And she's like, oh, well, if you want to do coaching in the future, you should try this. And it was the VWise, or Boots to Business, another opportunity, right? So she was guiding me in a way where I didn't even know I needed to be guided at that time. But now looking back, I'm like, I'm so grateful that I had her to help me with, some of the choices and, the offerings that they had. And so even if you're not sure right now if you're getting out, or you don't know what's out there for you, highly recommend that you start there. Again, regardless of what service you're in, if you're in the Navy or if you're in the Army, there's something out there for you to even explore. Because here's what happened to me, and I think Barb and Rosy, I mentioned this to you. I thought I wanted to get my PHR, and I was motivated, dedicated, and I started that track. And I started, doing informational sessions as it was recommended to me. I interviewed certain HR professionals in the area and even remotely at that time. And I came to, to my own senses. I spoke to my husband, and, I was looking at different opportunities. I'm like, this isn't for me. This is not what I want to do. I want to pursue project management. This is more of what I want to see myself doing in the future. And also with entrepreneurship, which, Barb, I cannot wait to hear, more about what you're going to say there. But it really just gave me an outlook of what I didn't want in my future, right? Because we get told a
Mhm.
lot of times, oh, do what you were doing in the military. Like when you transition, if you're a mechanic, be a mechanic. If you're HR, do HR, so on and so forth, project management. And so, Barb, for you being that, I know you mentioned you went through ROTC a long time ago, and I'm pretty sure it hasn't been that long. But um, when you got out and you went into your National Guard experience,
Mhm.
were you already an entrepreneur then, or was this something that came after?
It came after. And the best part about working with Rosie is that she can research the things that feel anecdotal and find that there are really trends that for both for the challenges and the opportunities. And together we can affect policy to get things to change. And that
Mm,
is why we're both driven, I think, to do the work that we do now. So my experience was moving overseas for the first time. It was not possible at that time to take my career with me. And so I felt at a loss. Of course, I can do the things that a military spouse often has to do, or any family member, get my family connected into the community. But then what about me? I really
right.
wanted to I wanted to continue in my path. So, like many of us, a pivot. So I started a personal training business with another woman veteran in Okinawa, Japan, and we served Marines, family members, and active duty personnel with the permission of the base installation. I did everything legal. But that was my first taste of entrepreneurship, that I could take something I really enjoyed and make it my vocation, get some money, yes, and a new experience that
Yeah.
I proved to myself this was something I wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah, and very importantly, I think you hit it earlier when you said that you asked a question, I should say. What about me, right? And I think that that's like the biggest concern. Just when
Mhm.
you said that, I literally asked the same question when I was getting out because we were dual military. And so for those of you that are dual military, you will know that it's not only tough when it comes to being in the military together, especially if you have kids and all of these additional key factors that you both have to face when you're in the service, but also when you're transitioning. It's a very difficult um, kind of like road to be on because you're both thinking of your
Hmm.
careers. And so it was very difficult for my husband and I to be 100% on what it could be, when we get out. But I am a firm believer that God is always behind everything, right? So he knew that we wanted it to get out eventually. We just didn't know when. So my
Mhm.
husband was medically retired and he got hurt on one of the jumps. So here goes our like roller coaster, right? Like, okay, time to tighten our seatbelt and really start actually planning and focusing on life after the military. How can we do that while we're
Mhm.
still in? And I think that's everyone's challenge. Everyone's challenge is how do I start planning for the unknown? And how do I start planning now in the unknown? Because a lot of our careers in the military, we get told kind of like where we need to be, certain deadlines, when we're going to PCS. But then there are moments when you don't know, right? And so I think when you mentioned, what about me? I asked myself that same question. Now that my husband's, he now found his career, everything's great. Now I can submit my packet and do it, the typical way of submitting my refresh packet that I'm separating, and I know that I'll be out in, within a year. And how do I start preparing? But at the same time, I know that there are so many other obligations that I have, right? I'm still a wife, I'm still a mother, I still want to have my career, but I want to pivot. I don't want to do HR. I don't want to do, air traffic controller anymore. I don't want to just jump out of airplanes. I want to do something else. And so when we have, people like Barb and Rosie, like you mentioned, Rosie's over here, collecting data and doing research. And how do we now focus on providing this to bigger DoD and saying, hey, this is where women are with their careers. How can we also help them? Because it's a whole separate container in
Right.
my mind. And so Rosie, if you can elaborate on that, with maybe even your experience
Yeah.
you were getting out or how that happened.
Yeah, well, I think I said this in the pre-meeting, and I think there is the transition process and then there's separation, and they're not necessarily the same. And I feel like anybody, and it's not just military, goes through various pivots, changes, careers. You kind of like you get older, you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. I think it's
Yes.
a common thing, right? So I feel like we all go through these transitional periods for sure. And certainly small businesses, it's something that happens immediately, but certainly as one gets older, you probably want to start a business that has meaning to it. You're probably really tired of working for somebody else and so forth and so on. Or in Barb's case, where traditional employment opportunities didn't exist, so you
Mm,
create your own opportunities for sure. I think these are all common stories, for sure. So I guess what I want to say from the research perspective, we did work on a paper. We talk about we shouldn't think of transition at the point of separation. We really need to think about a career journey. And certainly when we're separating, because our spouses may still be serving, we may want to think about a particular a pathway that is flexible, right? We may want to think of a small business opportunity because ideally you should be able to have a little bit more liberty making choices or doing things
mhm,
as well. But I think at the end of the day, you don't want to funnel people down a narrow pathway. You want to make sure there's a whole lot of opportunities at point of separation, but also afterwards, because you may separate, you may go to school, you may get a 4-year degree, you may get your PMP certification. You may be utilizing all the resources, free resources, education, training, benefits. But then you may start 10 years later and be like, you know what, I want to start a business. And so I think from that standpoint, it's really important to have these education and training resources at the time of separation. But more importantly, I think it's more important to have it post military life, because as you pivot or think about what you want to do, you want to make sure that there are resources there for you, so that you can make the best choices for yourself.
yeah. No, 100%. And I love that you pretty much said that it's not just a one thing, right? Like we can't just see it as a transition in general, but also a process and how it's really a career journey in as a whole. And I think that we don't see it like that as much because we also have, women that are like, you know what, I just don't know what I want to do, right? Like I actually at one point did say that. And I was completely fine with taking just 6 months to a year of just not even thinking of what I wanted to do because I was just so overwhelmed with, the things that I thought I wanted to do, especially when, I kind of felt like it was a heartbreak of, when you have like this, avatar of like, this is the person that I want to date, right? And then you're like, oh no, but I'm falling in love with this other avatar, right? Like this other thing that I never thought of. And that's literally what happened to me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I really
Yeah.
thought I loved this HR, in the corporate sector language, but I don't. I really want, something more like on the operations and projects and
Yeah.
something that could really help me with how I wanted to then, move into. And that was entrepreneurship with coaching. And, that's still something that is in the works for me, right? And not to say that I don't want to go all in. I do, but I just know that in this moment, I just love the team that I'm with. I love kind of like what I'm able to do, remotely and
Mhm.
all these other aspects, the autonomy that I have with my kids and all of that stuff as well. And I'm just not mentally ready to go all in, but I know that there are resources. And, I want to
Right.
elaborate more on what's available because this is what and I've shared this with you both before, this platform is ultimately for everyone that's listening right now. You may not know what you're going to do when you get out. You may not have any idea of where to even begin. And so, what I want to offer and invite every single one of you that is tuning in today is to take advantage of not only IVMF resources, but also to start networking with others that have gone
Absolutely.
through this program, with others that are readily available to just answer your question. And that's simply maybe even reaching out to someone that you know that used Onward's Opportunity or just an IVMF
Mhm.
resource, either um, through W or VWise, sorry, or any other program, because it's not about if you get out next year, it's really about when you do get out. And it's so
That's
important
true.
for us to start preparing, so important for us to, continue to build our toolkit. Because when I tell you that networking and understanding what resources are available, it really is arming you with, um, everything that you will need in preparation to your career journey, this new career that you're going to be going into. So, if you could just share with us a little bit about either the entrepreneurship side or even other resources
Sure.
that you think that will be very beneficial for someone that doesn't know if they're getting out or maybe even thinking about getting out.
Wendy, I think your path is really helpful in describing what the Institute can do. That you don't have to know even before you come to us, whether you want to work for someone or you want to be your own boss. We're going to help you navigate it, which Rosy has found is a huge challenge. First, identifying what resources are available to you, and then trying to figure out, well, where do I start? So let's just make it easy. You don't have to know. Just come. Come to the door and we'll get you there. So I'd say take that first step like you did, Wendy. You started with something. We do offer over 40 certifications in human resources, IT, cyber, digital, as well as project management. And that's why not do that? And it's free because we have amazing funders who find value and want to contribute to veterans, military spouses, and that transitioning service member. So just know that people are already waiting for you and your talent. And you just have to pick a path and take the first step, and we will help you get there. For those, so you can do that as you're leaving active duty. You can go to Onward Opportunities, like it sounds like you did. But if you find us later, that's okay. So the eligibility is also wider open. Yes, we're a Department of Defense Skill Bridge program, but if you don't get to us during transition, that's okay. Military spouses, Guard, Reserve, active duty, come and see us. The other part on entrepreneurship, what if you did get that PMP and you decide, hey, I should take my skills and go do this for people myself? I'm going to be a consultant. You don't have everything you need to know about entrepreneurship, business formation, perhaps the capital that's available to you, and all these other resources that, because of your identity as a veteran, a woman veteran, there are programs that are built just for you. But many of us, unfortunately, women, when we leave service, don't think of ourselves as veteran when we go looking for things. We think maybe woman, but maybe it's you're already putting yourself in a professional career field. That's another thing we can help you do is get into a network, multiple networks that are going to help you get the right resource at the right time. And I would love to talk about some of our entrepreneurship programs, but I'll just see if you have any question or comment, Wendy and Rosy, before I do.
Well, first, I just want to say, if you heard Barb correctly, she said, people are waiting for you. And Barb, when you said that, it really just kind of like set this fire in my belly for a little bit because
Good.
here's what a lot of us don't get told. And listen, if you already transitioned and you're like, hey, I don't need to listen to this episode, or I've been through that and I'm still stuck, or you feel that this isn't for you, I really want to just say that people are waiting for you no matter where you are in your career path. If you are struggling as an entrepreneur, if you are still indecisive on, should I do my PMP or should I even consider operations, whatever it may be, people are waiting for you. And it doesn't have to be corporate, it doesn't have to be clients out there, right? It may simply be, your family members. But if you already transitioned and you already have everything, your ducks in a row and everything, please share this episode with someone that you know that is thinking or maybe is feeling stuck or doesn't know where to begin. Because, Barb, what you just said before you go into everything that you have, I think it's very important for us to hear this again. We don't understand sometimes the value that we bring. We don't I think we intellectually understand it, but we don't believe it. And what I want to offer everyone today is to really take a moment. And I don't care if you've served for 2 years, if you're like, I never did a tour, or, I simply, was a specialist, or simply a captain, or simply, only at this duty station. The level, the experience that you have compared to a normal civilian is through the roof. When I tell you that just
Mhm.
basic training alone and just being around other leaders is really, what we bring to the table. Not to mention your expertise, the skills that you've, built during your tour, during your time in the military, but you really do bring a lot to the table. So I just want to remind everyone
Mm.
that if you're thinking, well, I don't think I'll get hired by Google or by these major technology companies, or even, get this business up and running, I want to remind you that you do have a lot of value. You have a lot of value to bring, and that people are waiting for you, like Barb said. And, with that, Barb, if you could please elaborate on what's available to them now.
Sure. I would love to. We just covered what is found in the onward opportunity, which is that career pathway. And it's not just for getting a job, it's for upskilling like you did. So that is a great, you can just make little pivots. You don't have to do a wholesale new career. Um, Entrepreneurship is where my fire in the belly is because I love working with entrepreneurs, and military veterans are excellent at this because it's not that we're crazy risk takers. It's that we are better at assessing a risk, figuring out how to mitigate it, and then having the confidence in our ability to go ahead and do it
Mhm.
once we are sure we've got it thought about. And it's an incredible quality, whether you're a spouse or a veteran, to be honest, because there's plenty of resilience that's required in both pathways, I'll say.
Right.
So for
Yeah.
women specifically, I would want to encourage, if you're at the beginning and you've got your idea, you want some help on figuring out, is this a hobby or is this something that really could be an
Yeah.
income producing venture for me? Then I recommend Veteran Women Igniting the Spirit of Entrepreneurship. 3 phases. The first part you're going to do synchronously, but online. Then you get 3 days in person. The next one's in Jacksonville, Florida, the 29th of September to the October 1st. Applications are
Nice.
open. We're not filled, so it's not too late. And after that, there's post program support, which means we will continue to engage. We will help you with your network with some technical assistance. So you become an alumni of the IVMF, and we'll keep working with you. What kinds of things will you learn? First, you'll get a chance where very few women veterans actually come together and do something. It's really hard for us to, again, identify with that
Mhm.
service and think this is valuable and I want to convene around it. It's incredibly powerful. And then we can help you with your personal brand, marketing for your venture, doing your business modeling, just the beginning of it. We've got programs for more advanced entrepreneurs because those same companies that want to hire you, they want to do business with you too and get you in their supply chains. So across from beginning to growth, we're ready also for those entrepreneurs. And I would love it if Rosy could just share a few of the barriers that are often hit by women veterans in particular. And then we can share as well how we're advocating for veterans to overcome those barriers.
Yeah, no, so absolutely. I think, the top challenges for women veteran entrepreneurs really is centered around funding and a lack of education, mentors, and so forth. So I think our program really kind of delivers pieces of that, although we don't directly provide funding. We tell you about the funding landscape. And certainly as far as funding is particular, I always say there's a way to fund. Some cases people may have a credit card and they may need that. And I would say, no, do not use your credit card. There are actually free funding resources, but you don't know about them. And I think you
Mm.
get a little bit of insight about all the various resources or funding avenues, if you will. People often start a business and want to go to the bank. Well, you're not capital ready at that point if you just started a business. And so obviously going to a bank, you'd probably be denied anyways, but certainly those are things. The other thing is the mentor and the network in particular. And again,
Right.
there are very few conferences or programs that are specifically for women veterans out there. compared to the general veteran landscape as well. And certainly, one of the things that I hear, especially for that VWise program, is that I haven't been around so many women veterans at one time. Boy, I feel like, this is, people I can relate to, they understand. I feel like I belong. And certainly that's a very common thing that you hear just in general about women veterans, about the lack of programmatic effort specifically for them. But certainly one thing that we recommend, and certainly we've implemented in our programs that we initiate and have as an experience, because it really is about belonging, as well as the network and the mentorship. Again, we're not trying to narrow down the pathway, but we really want you to start somewhere, but also be informed consumers when you start, which is probably why we've kind of centered this model and have ultimately these programs centered around that.
Yeah. No, I love that. And what you both said, I'm like, how do I sign up? Where do I go? Because it just sounds, amazing because like you mentioned, right? You have the camaraderie, the community, the people to hold you not only accountable, but really just to be there to help you with maybe any feedback, right? Any
Yes.
recommendations. And I think that that's what is needed, not only within the women community, but also just military community in general. And that's what you guys are doing. And, Rosie, like you mentioned, the research, the obstacles, the top challenges. I mean, that would be one thing for me, right? That I'm thinking ahead for next year. Like when I really want to scale and really be, 100% on this is my avatar. This is what I want to focus on. And so for any of you out there that are, maybe thinking about a business and maybe don't know where to begin, or maybe think that is not something that you can fund at the moment, Barb and Rosie, where can we find this information or where do we sign up?
I'd say start at the website. And I know our acronym is a little bit tough, but it's ivmf.syracuse.edu.
Okay. Yeah, and all of that will be in the show notes. And also
Perfect.
too, you mentioned that there's an event in Jacksonville. Is that all happens there, or is that just kind of like the cherry on top of the event?
That's VWise. So that is the middle portion that is one weekend long in person. About 200 women will be there. And, when I think about dedicating my time, because it's a lot of time to put a weekend plus the whole run up of that curriculum you've got to get through first, 80% of the VWise grads who started businesses are still in business. It is a program that's going to make a difference. And with Onward Opportunity, we are the first one to be independently validated through some great research that Rosie could tell you more about, but your income level is going to be higher after going
Yeah.
through Onward Opportunity than those who didn't.
Yeah. No, 100%. I just thank you so much. I'm super grateful that we were able to share, these
Thanks.
resources, your experiences, how you continue to impact, other veterans and more specifically military women. Rosie, Barb, thank you so much for joining me today and for sharing all of this great information because I even learned something new here today. And I may not be joining
Good.
this one, but I will be joining ones in the future when I know that I am ready to dedicate that weekend because again, there's so many things that are going on, right? We wear so many hats, and that's why
Yes.
I think it's so important for us to be able to continue to share this with military women. Like you're not alone. We get that you're doing, this whole 0 4 in the morning routine, get the kids ready, drop them off, go to work. There's a lot of chaos going on, on your 9 to 5. Then you come home, you're exhausted, but you still have to get dinner ready. You still have kids asking you to help them with your homework, with their homework. And oh, by the way, you have things that need to get done, like load the dishwasher and plan someone's, birthday party. And there's just so many things going on, especially during this time when, it's summertime, PCS season. So we know that
Right.
you are possibly at the very bottom of your to-do list, at the very bottom of, what you want to focus your attention to. And this is why I, am very committed and dedicated to continue to share stuff like this because we want you to be more intentional with your time. We want you to be more intentional with your career, not only as you begin to think about the transition, but doing it now, even when maybe you just started your military career, right? You're like, oh, I won't need this until 4 years from now. But the sooner you begin, the more resources you know, the more that you know that IVMF is there and so many other resources, the more equipped and ready you will be, even when you think that you will not be getting out, right? Like it happened to us. My husband and I planned on being in for 20 years, but that didn't happen, right? God had another plan for us. And so when there's, something that we need to be, planning for, we know that there's resources available. And I will say that you guys pretty much hit on the top three things that we as humans are concerned about: either our health, our time, and our money, right? And so all of this comes down to us checking the block on everything, giving us that peace of mind that there are people waiting for us to provide, the value that we do have, but also that there is also a program that will help us financially, a program that will guide us through these steps so that we're not constantly overwhelmed because we don't, think that we don't have the time when we really do. But it starts with you doing it now. So if you don't know where you're at, or you're thinking about getting out, or you're like, hey, I only have 30 days left before I actually get my DD 214, I want you to go right now, go to the show notes, check out IVMF, see if there's anything out there for you that can help you. If you're in the Jacksonville area in September, go ahead and sign up now, because when it gets filled up, it gets filled up. So thank you, ladies. Is there anything additional, maybe how they can connect with you on social media, LinkedIn? Are you also on LinkedIn?
I certainly am.
And they
Yeah,
can
Happy to
find
do that.
you as Barbara.
Yes,
Okay.
Barbara
Okay.
Carson.
yeah,
And they'll
yeah.
be here in the show notes as well. What about you, Rosie?
Yeah, exactly. I'm on LinkedIn. I don't know if it's under Rosalinda or Rosy, but I will make sure you have the
Yeah.
connection. I mean, I think the only thing is absolutely we have a number of great resources, publication library on our website. We've only hit a little bit, but certainly I feel like reach out to any one of us for any specific questions. Certainly, like I like what Barb says, we're here for you. So certainly want to emphasize that as well. And I know I will probably both be in Jacksonville. So if you are there, if you show up, just say, hey, I heard it on the podcast. That would be
Yes.
great.
Yes. Thank you so much, ladies, again for joining us. And listen, if again you're on the fence or you don't know, highly recommend that you do that now. If you're driving, please wait till you get to your destination. But seriously, it's better to start now and really start exploring the opportunities. All right, ladies. Well, I hope that this has not only blessed you, but also encouraged you to begin somewhere, and that is through IVMF. All right. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you soon. Have a great rest of your day. Chat with you later, ladies. Bye.